There is a quiet discomfort that arises the first time you begin to deny yourself something you are fully capable of having. It is not loud and it is not dramatic, but it is undeniably present. A subtle resistance that feels almost personal, as if a part of you is being restrained against its will. And in that moment, the mind immediately begins to interpret this act as loss, as though something valuable is being taken away rather than something deeper being established. Most people never stay with that feeling long enough to understand it, because saying no to the world is easy to justify. There are reasons, expectations, boundaries that make it acceptable. But saying no to yourself, especially when no one is watching, when no external rule is being imposed, that is where the real friction begins. Because now, the conflict is internal. There is no audience, no validation, no immediate reward, only a decision, and the weight of it. What becomes evident over time is that self-control is rarely about dramatic acts of discipline. It does not exist in grand gestures or extreme restrictions. It lives in small, almost invisible moments, where you are faced with a choice that seems insignificant on the surface, yet carries a deeper consequence in the way it shapes your relationship with yourself. The impulse to indulge, to delay, to choose comfort over effort. These are not flaws in themselves. They are natural tendencies. But the question is not whether these tendencies exist. The question is whether you remain governed by them, or begin to observe them with enough clarity to choose differently. And that distinction changes everything. Because the moment you start choosing differently, even in the smallest ways, you begin to experience a kind of resistance that feels unfamiliar. It is not physical exhaustion or external pressure, but something more internal. A quiet pushback from the part of you that is used to immediate gratification. This is where many people misinterpret what is happening. They assume that this resistance means something is wrong, that self-control is creating unnecessary tension, that perhaps life is meant to be lived more freely, without this constant need to restrain oneself. But what they are actually encountering is the process of separation. Separation between impulse and action. And that space, however small it may seem, is where freedom begins. Because when there is no space, there is no choice. You react, you follow, you comply with whatever arises in the moment. And while that may feel like freedom on the surface, it is in reality a form of dependence, a subtle attachment to whatever the mind or body happens to want at any given time. True self-control does not restrict you. It reveals how much you are already restricted, without realizing it. It shows you that what you often call freedom is simply the absence of awareness, where you move from one desire to another without ever questioning whether those desires deserve your obedience. And once you see that clearly, it becomes difficult to go back. Because now, every moment of indulgence carries a different weight. Not guilt, not shame, but awareness. You begin to notice the pattern, the predictability of your own behavior, and how easily it can be directed by comfort if left unchecked. This awareness is not meant to make you rigid. It is meant to make you deliberate. There is a significant difference between a life that is restricted and a life that is intentional. Restriction feels imposed. It feels forced, external, limiting. Intention, on the other hand, feels chosen. It carries a sense of authorship, where your actions are not reactions, but decisions that align with something deeper than immediate satisfaction. And this is where the nature of self-control begins to shift. It is no longer about denying yourself for the sake of discipline. It becomes about protecting your attention, your energy, and your direction from being constantly diluted by impulses that do not serve you in the long run. This protection is subtle. It does not demand perfection. It does not require you to eliminate every distraction or resist every temptation. What it asks for is something far more sustainable: the ability to pause, even briefly, and examine whether the choice in front of you is aligned with the person you are trying to become. And in that pause, everything changes. Because even a moment of awareness interrupts the automatic nature of behavior. It gives you just enough distance to respond instead of react. Over time, this distance becomes more natural. The urge still appears. The desire still arises. But it no longer carries the same authority it once did. It becomes a suggestion rather than a command. And that is a profound shift. Because now, you are not fighting yourself. You are understanding yourself. You begin to see that the part of you that seeks comfort is not an enemy, but it is also not a leader. It has a role, but it cannot be allowed to dictate every decision. And once that balance is established, self-control stops feeling like a constant struggle and starts feeling like a quiet form of clarity. There will still be moments where you choose comfort, moments where you say yes instead of no. But even those moments change in nature. They are no longer unconscious. They are chosen, experienced, and understood. And because of that, they do not carry the same consequences as before, because they are not part of a pattern you are blindly following. This is why self-control, when understood properly, does not create a sense of loss. It creates a sense of space. Space between who you are and what you feel. Space between what you want now and what you want most. And within that space, you begin to experience a form of freedom that is not dependent on circumstances. A freedom that does not require you to have everything, but instead allows you to remain steady even when you do not. Because you are no longer controlled by the absence or presence of something external. You are guided by something internal that is far more stable. This is not a skill that develops overnight. It is built gradually, through repeated moments of awareness, through quiet decisions that no one else sees, through a willingness to sit with discomfort without immediately trying to escape it. And in doing so, you begin to understand that discomfort is not always something to be avoided. Sometimes, it is an indication that you are stepping outside the patterns that once defined you. And that is not restriction. That is growth, in its most honest form. In the end, learning to say no to yourself is not about becoming rigid or denying life's pleasures. It is about becoming someone who is not easily pulled in every direction by fleeting desires. Someone who can remain centered even when options are abundant and temptations are constant. Because when you reach that point, you no longer feel like you are missing out. You feel like you are finally in control of where your life is going. And that is a form of freedom that does not fade with time. Self-control is not the act of denying yourself what you want, but the quiet mastery of choosing what truly deserves your yes.